Welcome back, everybody. This is Eric and Matt, and this is Life, Liberty, and the Pursuit, your beacon of freedom and the American way of life. Tune in every Friday for a new episode as we dive into the world of liberty and what makes our country great. All right, guys, welcome back. This is Eric and Matt here with Life, Liberty, and the Pursuit. All right, we've got an awesome podcast here for you today, and I know it's been a while since Matt and I have gotten together to record podcasts, but we are back, and back with a vengeance, as they say. In today's podcast, we're going to be discussing military recruitment.
Or the lack thereof.
That's right. Right now, it just seems like there is a lot in the news about the lack of military recruitment, the military not making their recruiting goals, and we thought it would be an interesting thought experiment to sort of break down an entire episode just on why we think that is. Now, it's odd because this morning I actually put up an entire Twitter thread of like maybe 18 tweets that I unrolled there of these reasons. So we're going to sort of dissect this Twitter post that I made, which is actually doing pretty well. It's getting quite a few likes and shares, and it's gaining some traction. So I thought, hey, today, with this being a hot button issue with a lot of people, maybe it would be a great idea to just go ahead and, talk about it, Matt. And you and I come from a similar background in terms of militarily, and,
yes.
We're both veterans. We've both, been inside the grinder, if you will, at least enough to sort of understand the inner workings.
Yeah, and just enough to know that it wasn't for us.
Yeah, well, and here's the thing, too, is sometimes being a part of something bigger than yourself, it can be really great for people. They come away with some awesome life experiences. They have some amazing friends that you get that sometimes they end up being your friends for life. And there's even situations where you haven't seen a person you served with in 20 years, and then you stumble across them in life, and it's like you're so happy to see that person, and it's like that time disappeared in between the last time you saw them. So
that is
the
true.
Military can be a rewarding experience for a lot of people. It can be a rewarding lifestyle. I'm not here to detract from the selfless service that many men and women put forth every single day and continue to. However, there is a severe cultural problem that exists with military recruitment, and I think it would be interesting to break this down. And this is my perspective and Matt's perspective here, and we're going to try to be fair and we're going to try to be concise. But I think that we really have to, look some very discerning bulls in the eye directly here when we look at these things. And I think people will come away understanding where a lot of us GWAT veterans feel that have known war for the last 20 years.
That's right.
And some of our perspectives that I think are very legitimate grievances.
Absolutely.
So do we want to just sort of use, the Twitter post that I made as sort of a way to keep us organized, and we'll just go off some of these bullet points?
Yeah, and, I know you posted about it and you wrote an article, but what this podcast will serve is really more of a long-form explanation, because you can only fit so much on Twitter or into an article. And this really gives us the opportunity to extrapolate on what those points were, and also to add some stuff that maybe in hindsight we can go back and say, well, this is also a reason. Because once it's posted, I mean, barring taking it down, you don't really have anything else to say about it.
Yeah, there's no edit button.
Yeah,
on
there
Twitter.
is none. It's live.
You can't go back in and really change something once it's there.
Correct.
And I'm not saying that I don't believe, I'm 110% on board with everything. I mean what I say, and I stand behind what I said. But we'll go through and articulate on some of these a little bit more.
Articulate.
So let's get into the first one. And so a lot of people don't have any faith in the administrative state. All right, and that goes without saying. I mean, look at all of these alphabet agencies that are being weaponized openly against people, and it's clear to say that most of those people that these agencies are being weaponized against are conservatives, right? They're more of the, I don't really believe in the whole left-wing, right-wing paradigm. I'm more of one of those kind of people that just look at individuals on an individual basis, and I judge that person individually on their merits and their flaws. So I think it sometimes can be a little unfair to say, well, because you're a rural redneck person with a gun that you are right wing, when that may not necessarily always be true, especially when the goalposts of that concept move so readily into the extremes on both ends of that political paradigm, right? So there's been a huge paradigm shift in those goalposts. In fact, that's an entire episode all in of its own. So we're not going to even get down that rabbit hole. But the point is that it's clear that these alphabet agencies are being weaponized against people on the right-wing conservative faction, if you will, of people. And traditionally and historically, most people that volunteer or join the military for combat MOSs are typically more of your Christian, conservative, rural type of people. So right there, yep, they're alienating a humongous group of people who already don't have trust in the administrative state, Matt, because of these inflammatory things that are being said about them. You've got the media parroting everything from you're a racist to you're a Bible-thumping, gun-loving person that, they're going to try to paint you in the worst possible picture they can with the worst colors and the broadest brushstrokes, right? So how are you supposed to react as a young man thinking, well, I'm going to make a career out of the military, when you've got your very own people weaponizing the very functions of the government against you? Aren't we all supposed to be on the same side here when you see that clear division? I think that that's one factor. That's why it's number one in terms of why people are so hesitant to join the military.
I would just like to add on, I agree 100%, but there's also this sensationalism that's going into the military version of those alphabet agencies. So just like in the civilian world, you have, FBI, CIA, those investigative agencies. In the military, or at least in the Army and Navy as well, you have CID, you have JAG, which due to social media has been brought to light that they're corrupt just like their civilian counterparts. So stuff like the Eddie Gallagher investigation, where they got caught manipulating evidence, and they got caught recording when they shouldn't be recording during interviews. This is knowledge has been put out. So when you start seeing that and you're in a military environment, why would you want to go into that type of organization knowing that they're just as corrupt, or they have a mission to win the case regardless of, your personal outcome as a soldier or a sailor or a Marine? You also have JAG and CID that are just like their civilian counterparts. They have a mission. They want to catch somebody, and it's been shown that they will do things that, their civilian counterparts also do. Planning of evidence, stuff like that. And to go back to what you were mentioning about, most of the combat arms, or a large portion of the combat arms community being right-wing, right conservatives, stuff like that, it's important to note that on the combat arms side of the military, or at least in the Army, and for other branches as well, you can expect that 1% to 3% is combat arms. So of the entire military, only 3% is combat arms. So where does that leave, everything else? 97% is a kind of a hodgepodge mixture of either right or left or center. And that puts you, at least from a combat arms standpoint, that puts you in a weird position, because you're going in knowing that your beliefs and your values are in the minority compared to the rest of the organization.
Sure.
And another one is, if you look at what happened, I think it was maybe 6 months ago out of Fort Sam Houston, there was a lot of issues in Texas. There was a lot of issues revolving around, cartel and cartel people in the military. Lots of people getting caught trying to smuggle people across the border. A lot of drugs coming across the border from soldiers. Missing people in the military.
Going missing.
Yeah, just going missing. These are things that you typically would be shielded from in the military, because the military operates as its own government. So you're supposed to go in feeling safe. All right, I'm in the military. Who's really going to mess with us? And
right.
Then wrong answer.
Well, Eddie Gallagher is a hero.
Yes.
And, imagine someone at his level, right, at his rank and his job and everything that he was doing in in combat and everything, and to think that your own people would throw you under the bus. That's another reason that someone may say, well, gosh, I mean, if I'm going to go into a combat arms MOS or any MOS, maybe I'm a drone operator, maybe I'm a fighter pilot, maybe I'm the cook, who knows? How do I know that these people are really going to have my back and that they're not going to use me as a political pawn and throw me under the bus?
Which unfortunately the military in general and as a whole has done time and time again. They have a track record of hanging their people out to dry. And this happened even when we were in Iraq, and they had, they were prosecuting, infantry guys. They were out there trying to get them on war crimes for defending themselves, for defending their friends, their convoys, just doing their mission. You have to worry about that. You have to worry about getting hung out to dry or letting the Iraqi government hang you out to dry and just leaving it in their hands. Like, oh yeah, go ahead, you can have them.
It is kind of weird
it's
that
insane.
The ROE, and as it evolved over the course of the war, and it got more and more and more strict. And look, I'm just going to say that
Yes.
it's like, look, that's a result of certain deployments and the way that particular rotation handled themselves and conducted themselves. And I'm not going to say that like our actions didn't directly contribute to why the ROE was changed. Now, I mean, the difference is, okay, you might have shot when they told you not to, or well, maybe not when they told you not to, maybe when they didn't want you to, or maybe they would have been like, we wish you wouldn't have done that or something like that. But there was always a legitimate reason, and it's not like, you would just shoot at something for any reason. That would have to be obviously a really good reason. Mm-hmm. Anyway, I digress. The point is that, nobody wants to feel like their comrades are not going to have their back, and especially the high command or the people in charge, right? You want to know going into a situation that they're going to have your back and they're going to support your decisions no matter what. As long as, obviously you got to follow a few certain rules and standards and things like that, but you want to know that people are going to have your back and that they're going to stick their neck out to protect, everybody. So the administrative state, number one, that is totally a valid reason. When we go back to, if someone's a civilian and hasn't joined the military yet, all they have as a basis for knowing how the administrative state does things is what they see, right? They see all of this weaponization of the alphabet agencies against Joe Blow public. I mean, what if you're a pro-gun person who grew up in a rural area and on one breath you've got all these people want to take your gun rights away and Congress wants to take your gun rights and you're supposed to somehow raise your hand and swear an oath to put on the uniform and do this job for a bunch of people that want to take your rights away?
Yeah, they would hang you out in a second.
Yeah, they want to hang you out already, and that's without even having a uniform on. And then you're expected to put the uniform on and perform this job for people that want to disarm you.
And that's why you don't see a lot of people going career anymore. Like when you and I were in, Eric, it was common to see career soldiers. Like it was like they were like, oh, I got 3 more years or 4 more years in, and I've been in since I was 18, and I'm about to retire out. Oh, yeah. At the ripe age of like 45, which is you're about to retire and you're 45. Like that's insane.
Yeah, like join the military right out of high school and make a career out of it.
And that was a valid thing. Like you had, and 45 is relatively young, especially in these days. But you just don't see that anymore. If you do, it's more on the officer side. I don't really see too many enlisted personnel riding it out because it's become unbearable. It's just so unbearable for them to have this toxic leadership, and it's
the officers have a much better reason to ride it out than the enlisted people because they have political aspirations more times than not.
This is true.
Especially once you get into general officer and general and above and all the other ranks that come along with it. Heck, even colonels are certainly grooming themselves to, get into those political positions. I mean, a general is a political position. It's a position they put you in, and, you're more of a politician at that point than you are, I'm not going to say they don't make decisions, but there is, much more reasoning for officers to stick it out in the hopes that they're going to, reach their political aspirations.
I would say once you get to like captain, you have to make a decision on like whether you're going to stay in or whether you're going to get out, because after that point, it's no longer fun and games.
I mean, you're a captain at the Pentagon, like getting coffee for people.
It's
like,
what? Yeah, you're an aide. Like imagine being a captain with like 3 combat deployments, and all of a sudden you're fetching this dude coffee. Like you have to have a certain level of like, grit. Like that takes more grit than being on the battlefield, like serving this dude coffee.
All right, so let's get into number 2. And look, if you look up articles related to the lack of military recruitment going on right now, this is what it's going to point to the most, and that's kind of why it's second on the list. And they're not really in any order, but this is just one that came off the top of my head second, and that's this whole woke thing within the military. And, the woke culture. And without like pointing fingers at certain people or saying that it's one side or the other, I think the best way to look at this is strategically and militarily as a military person, right? Like if your job as a military is to fight the enemy and to have, a good state of readiness and to be well trained and to be well equipped and to have good unit cohesion and to have good command structure on the battlefield and good communications and to be an effective fighting unit, right? That is the goal of a military unit. Let's just break it down to those basic things and remove political aspirations or political woke activism or anything like that from the situation. People want to be a part of a unit that has a strong cohesiveness and that is effective and that, has a high chance of survivability. I mean, wouldn't we say that that is an accurate thing that we all want in a military unit?
Absolutely.
You want to survive. You don't want to go to combat and feel like, the people around you are a liability. So if we just remove the political functions of the woke ideology from the situation and just say that we can all agree that if people are arguing about, Marxist critical race theory, or they're arguing about what gender they are, or trying to add their personal views into the military environment, I think we can all say that no matter how you feel about those situations, that's irrelevant. It's important to make the distinction that that gets in the way of being an effective fighting force. And what would you rather be a part of? A group of people who just ignore all that crap and focus on their job, or a group of people who are probably going to get you killed?
Yeah, I mean, and
that's a factor. I mean, that's it
really is, and I think that the woke culture has, inadvertently in the beginning weaved its way into the military construct. The problem is that once it gets a root in the leadership, now you have that trickling down into the masses, and if you can imagine having a leader that values, and I get it, the military is supposed to be a team environment. So everybody, us together, the team, you've all heard it. You're only as fast as your slowest man, which is true in training, but you still have to have your individual goals and you have to have your individual standards. And that's kind of put out the window with a lot of these leaderships. They've become toxic. You've had a lot of the, woke culture come in that you see in the media, and it's just not good. Things that were valued for promotion are no longer valued for promotion. So a good example of that is, and you can read this on the DoD Insider Military Times website, and this just happened with the Air Force. The Air Force, and you mentioned like huge bonuses getting paid out. So the Air Force is paying out these tremendous bonuses to their cybersecurity, or tech and cybersecurity jobs, but they're reducing the bonuses for their what they call strenuous and non-technical jobs. So you, on one end, you have the technical side getting paid, up to $60,000 in bonuses, while your, strenuous labor, non-technical, is only getting paid $900 for an enlistment. Think about that. I mean, who would want to stay? And if nobody's doing the actual labor work, or this, what they would determine, and again, that's who's the arbiter of that? Who determines what's strenuous and non-strenuous? But there's just a vast gap in leadership, what they determine to be, who's worthy and who's unworthy. And quite frankly, it's the Air Force. Everything is non-strenuous.
All right. So let's just kind of backtrack a little bit and talk about just real basically the recruiting numbers, right? So this is just a snapshot of a website that just shared, as NBC just shared a little bit, and this is like the first Google search. If you just go on Google and type in military recruitment shortage 2022, which is kind of hot news right now, it says the Army so far recruited only half the soldiers it hoped for fiscal year 2022, the Army Secretary says. With weeks left in the fiscal year, Secretary Christine Wormuth said the Army has recruited about 52% of its goal and will likely wind up short by as many as 15,000 recruits. So there's recruiting goals that have to be met and everything like that. And of course, the bonuses they're paying out are crazy. So with the bonuses being, nuts, they're offering bonuses and incentives, and they're waiving like a lot of things that in the past normally would keep you from being recruited.
Yeah, they are.
I mean, whether it's, hey, you don't pass the tape test, or you don't pass a PT test, or you don't pass a drug test, or maybe you've got some questionable criminal history or something in the past, they would have been much more stringent about like, look, you can't join the military if you've done X, Y, Z. They're even throwing a lot of that out the door and going, well, you got a little questionable past. That's okay. We'll still take you. And I'm not saying that a person shouldn't have an opportunity to prove themselves reformed and serve their country even. I'll even argue that I'm okay with that as long as you go in there and keep your chin up and do a good job and be a good soldier, then fine. Who cares what your past is, because we're your family now. That's the way they look at it, right?
That's the way it should be, at least.
Should be, of course. So that's a good way to get into number 3. We're going to go ahead and move on here, but it's clear to say that, yes, just like in the civilian world where woke is broke, right? We already done an episode about, woke being broke and go woke, go broke. It's got a lot of negative connotations to it. It doesn't mean what it used to mean. And I think that there are certain political factions that have sort of hijacked that woke idea and turned it into something completely negative. And of course, we're not going to get into that entirely in this podcast, but it's just important to recognize that, there are people that view the woke culture as a good progressive thing that we should support, and then those that don't. And of course, if military recruitment numbers are any, indication, especially with the higher bonuses, it would appear anyway that at least, half of our society that would consider joining the military, let's just say, don't agree with it. So that should give you a pretty strong idea of the division of political ideology and how it correlates to military recruitment.
Well, there's
you can't ignore those numbers.
I agree, and there's a problem when the Marine Corps is having a problem with recruitment, because they've notoriously always been very, very strong at recruiting. They have a very good recruiting program. They have a good strategy. Some would even say it's predatory. I don't think it's predatory, but some would, and I will just say that. Well, the very basic, they like to go into high schools. Like, they'll just get you when you're in high school. Some like the Army will do that, but these guys are just in there all the time. They have like liaison officers for the high schools, which is fine. I joined the Army out of high school. Best decision I ever made. But they have a very strong recruiting program, but even they're having issues right now with the recruiting numbers. And that says something, because they've always been on the higher end.
The Marine Corps want the youth of our nation to be the clay that they can put in their hand and mold them into the super soldier they want them to be.
Yep.
And say what you want, but the Marine Corps makes the best killers on the planet.
Nothing made me happier knowing that we had like Marines around us when we were going out for a mission. Yeah. We're like, oh, so we have 2-5 out there. Okay,
yeah. We
cool.
can make fun of them all we want.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, look, I respect the Marines very much. I respect the institution, and I respect the men and women it produces.
Yep.
So they are a very time-honored institution, and nothing but respect for our devil dogs out there. All right, number 3. All right, this is going to hurt some people's feelings, but listen, it has to be said. Okay, listen, I will always tell you what you need to hear. I'm not gonna babysit you guys and tell you what you want to hear. I'm gonna tell you what you need to hear, and just understand that I can speak for Matt when I say this, that a lot of us feel this way. So understand that I come from this position with the utmost amount of respect for those of you that have served in global war on terrorism, okay? But here we go. Number 3, 20 years of lies will make you wise. Now, I didn't mean for that to be a rhyme, but I guess I was a
but
poet.
It does rhyme.
And I didn't know it. But look, a lot of people have been there and bought the T-shirt, okay? You know, Dick Cheney lied about weapons of mass destruction, okay? They got this entire group of our youth to eat it up like candy, that there were these weapons of mass destruction, that Saddam was going to blow everyone up, and that we have to go in and save the world, you know, all this sort of thing, right? And it turns out that they knew from the very beginning it was a giant freaking lie. They knew there wasn't any dang weapons of mass destruction. It was all a giant lie to, you know, pad the pockets of the military-industrial complex, that the Bushes and the Cheneys and all them damn people were all in bed with them. It was all a giant grift from day one. Right. Now, to say that there wasn't some danger to us, of course. I mean, obviously, we're not going to go down the road of conspiracy theories or unproven theories or things like that. But as a person that's lived through it and been the oil in between the cogs and the gears of the machine, you know, you can't help but see that, you know, you see a Kellogg Brown and Root truck pull up, and you end up finding out that every single time you sign your name on that freaking piece of paper to enter the chow hall, that the U.S. taxpayers are paying like $89 for you to get a juice box and a freaking bowl of cereal and an omelet that cost them freaking pennies on the dollar to serve you. And to know that it's really just a giant money laundering operation. It's a giant for-profit operation. It's like think about it like a for-profit prison.
That's the model. That was the model.
Instead of it being a for-profit private prison, you're the prisoner. You just happen to be somewhere else, and you happen to be doing tasks that make them money. Mm-hmm. I mean, but that's the way I've always looked at it. You know, after a while, you have to call it for what it is. And if the lie that got us there and perpetuated that situation for 20 years, and, all right, look at the Cheneys. Okay, they're living high on the hog in mansions. They're free as a bird. Not a single bit of accountability came to any of those people. And then the vets from the global war on terrorism, where are they? A lot of them are in prison, divorced, got addicted to drugs, you know, have their lives are ruined. Some of them are living on the streets, homeless, hungry, friendless, penniless, and for what? So it's like after a while, you got to call it what it is. You got to call it like you see it, that we were lied to. And I think that the stains, the pain of that situation is still fresh in a lot of people's minds. It didn't just go away when we had this haphazard pullout from Afghanistan that was a giant debacle. That wasn't good either. But just because, okay, we're out of here, that's it. The global war on terrorism's over. No, it isn't. It just changed to a different location. You know, it's the same people pulling the same strings, trying to enrich themselves off the same military-industrial complex. Now, I'm not going to get into Ukraine because that's not what this is about. But Ukraine is really just a continuation of this giant military-industrial complex grifting, you know, situation we see before us. But people that are considering joining the military, to get back to recruitment, they got good memories. They remember this stuff. They don't forget. Not easily. Think about it. You want to join the military, who are you going to talk to? You're going to talk to people that have been in the military. You're going to talk to people that have served in combat in previous wars and get them to tell you. So what do you think they're telling people? You think they're telling people, oh yeah, Uncle Sam will take care of you? Do you think that they're really going to have anything positive to say? Divorced, you know, drunk, addicted to drugs, homeless. You think they're really going to have a glowing review that they're going to give the military? I mean, that's just the truth of the matter. People can hate me, they can disagree with me, but at the end of the day, that's the truth.
Well, it's the truth, and it stings. And to add on to that, you have the Cheneys running around now. To play devil's advocate, I will tell you that when we were at the base, Camp Stryker, I was very happy to take a warm shower when we were there.
Yeah.
I was very happy to have an opportunity to go in and eat some of that awesome KBR food. I don't know if it was worth $87. At the time, it probably was. But there at the time, it did serve a purpose. Now, I think that there was definitely some corruption that happened with KBR, and I think it was like 2 or 3 other companies, Halliburton, some other companies.
Everybody was getting filthy.
Everybody
rich.
had their hands. I mean, at the time, it was the Wild West, man. Everybody was getting paid. But something you said really resonated with me, which was, you have veterans you have 20 years worth of veterans, GWAT veterans out there. Some of them serving 1 deployment, some serving, there's guys that have been in 8 deployments in 2 theaters of war, Afghanistan and Iraq. And it made me remember, and I had to look it up real quick. These veterans a lot of them are homeless. A lot of them suffer from PTSD. A lot of them have anxiety. A lot of them have just some severe mental disorders, and the VA is actively turning them away. They don't want to get them paid. They don't want to help them get treatment that they need. And I would say that, if you did a combat deployment and you were exposed to the types of stuff that you see over there, there is some compensation there that'll help you get back on your feet. But to be actively turned away from that and turned down, it should be a crime. And it happens every time. It happens all the time, Eric. And when I turn around and I see, there's something, and you guys can Google this. It's been on it. President Biden issued a settlement for something called Havana Syndrome. And Havana Syndrome, guys, here's the definition. Havana Syndrome is an alleged set of medical symptoms with unknown causes experienced mostly abroad by U.S. government officials. So, diplomats, high-ranking government officials, and spies. They have a magical disease that they got, Havana Syndrome, unexplained. They all got settlements of $187,000. And this is recent. This was only in 2016 that it happened.
And we got homeless veterans living on the street.
These people get $187,000 payments at one-time payment. But yet we can't help the people that helped secure the freedoms or devoted their lives to being overseas. We can't get them the help that they need. And people see that. We're not stupid. And the future generation is not stupid. They see that. And they say, well, why would I do that? Why would I put my body on the line and be thrown out like a piece of trash?
That's an excellent point. That is also a great way for us to segue to the next one. And it actually connects perfectly to the dots there. The next one, number 4, is that people see what's happening to the folks that are currently serving. They're treated like second-rate citizens. Look at it was either the State Department or the DOD or somebody said, "Oh, well, if you're in the military, apply for food stamps to deal with inflation."
Yep.
So if you're thinking about getting in the military and you saw that, because word gets around a lot more than what it did 10, 20 years ago. With social media, people can easily see what these government officials are saying, what the media is saying. People pay attention to that stuff. And if you're thinking about getting in the military, would you really want to join the military knowing that their answer to you not being paid enough is, oh, just go get on food stamps?
Yeah.
Excuse me? What? You do realize in the Russian military that officers live below the poverty line. Officers in the Russian military live below the national poverty line. They are lower than poverty. What do you think the enlisted guys live like?
Yeah.
Now, we're not Russia. However, the point is, we've always been a nation that we try our best to take good care of our military, right? You ought to be able to at least live like a normal person. If you join the military, you should be paid a salary that is befitting of a normal person that needs to live a normal life. You shouldn't be thinking, how am I going to pay for food? And then their answer being, well, go get on food stamps.
Yeah, supplement that with food stamps. And there's a whole, when the military is no different than, any other bureaucratic organization. There's actually a bunch of barracks in North Carolina right now that are basically they had to evacuate. They had to relocate the soldiers that were living there because they were unhospitable. They were unlivable conditions. And they're trying to, revamp these and rebuild them. There was a whole lot of corruption around third-party companies that are supposed to be handling maintenance. And essentially what would happen is the soldier would call in and say, hey, put in a maintenance request like you would in an apartment. So if you live in an apartment and you need something, you call the office and they send somebody out there. Well, the third-party companies that are, suckling at the government's teat are, putting these through as being repaired when they're not being repaired. And there's no...
And they're collecting.
Yeah, they're collecting the money. There's no remedy. There's no customer service number. They're just marking these things as done. And these, soldiers are living in black mold infested, barracks, leaks everywhere. And the answer is like, these stories get out. Like we heard about it, you and me, when we're civilians and we hear about this kind of stuff. What do you think everybody else is going to think? Why would I want to do that?
And in the past, a lot of that stuff would have been buried, or the public eye just wouldn't be on it because, the information wouldn't be out there. So social media, or let's just say the internet in general, the internet has been a cultural phenomenon for a lot of reasons, which could almost merit an entire podcast on its own to discuss those merits and flaws. But it has also made the transfer of information much more prevalent, and things are out there a lot more than what they used to be.
Well, that, and I mean, just YouTube in general, you start to see all these like soldiers, airmen, Marines pop up with like making their rants online, and you see, and I'm kind of torn because part of me says, oh man, that's not very professional, but at the same time, it would say, well, I'm almost happy they're doing that because they're bringing to light what's going on in the organization. Like if you have toxic leadership, of course you can't get it fixed because the leadership above them is toxic. What can you do? You have to put it out there into the ether. And yes, it stops other people from joining. Because if I saw some of these rants before I joined the military, I'm like, nah, pass. I'm not going to do it. So it's almost like a self-fulfilling prophecy that the only way that it's going to get better is if they actually change. So they have to change the leadership in order to make the rants stop, and then everything goes back to normal.
So number 5, we're going to go down the rabbit hole here. Now, this is another one that is going to be a bit controversial to some. However, I feel like it's an important thing to speak of. And now, I know there's going to be some varying opinions here, but basically, number 5 kind of starts out as, let me read directly from it. And maybe this, because I articulated it fairly well, and I don't want to risk not articulating it properly. Maybe you're not worth dying for. Ooh.
Yeah.
All right. Well, think about it. Society has spent the last 4 to 6 years telling us how bad America is, how bad the military and law enforcement members are, how unfair life is in this country. And we've been told that our masculinity is toxic, that we're all racist. And now, do you want to be the first person to jump up and say, choose me, when you feel like society has that opinion of you? And again, this is primarily combat MOSs who typically come from rural conservative communities and things like that. I mean, Tennessee is called the volunteer state after all.
That's right.
And it's safe to say that, most Tennessee rednecks are certainly not, leftists. Now, is that to say that your breakdown that you gave earlier about, okay, well, only 3-4% of the entire military is combat arms, which is true, right? But even support elements or every other aspect of the military, I think the breakdown of, let's just say, progressive versus conservative is, I would say, either evenly matched or, if not, probably more right-leaning than you might think. I think traditionally and geopolitically, socially, the military, and now look, people can disagree with me all they want, but the numbers don't lie. Statistically, the military has been traditionally comprised more of conservatives than it has.
I agree.
Other side.
But I think that the leadership is actually comprised more of people that lean left, and that's where you start to see the issues, and that's why you see people getting rubbed the wrong way.
Well, it plays to the kind of people they are because they think they're better than everyone. They want to dictate. Yes. They want to tell you what time it is. They want to claim that they know what's best for you, and without getting too far down this rabbit hole, there's actually been some well-documented situations where, like, commanders from World War II, for instance, on the German side. Now, I'm not going to get into this right here because this is almost a whole nother subject in of it itself, but it's interesting that after we spoke to many German commanders that were captured in World War II and asked them like, hey, what did you hate about fighting us the most? And they say, because you guys do things completely not by the book. Like, you don't listen to your commanders. You get on the ground and you see an opportunity, you take it. And that's a very, very different style of fighting than almost anybody else in the military. So if it's one thing that our military gets well that many other militaries fail at, is that we are very much a eyes on the ground type of group of people. We're going to see an opportunity and we're going to take it, and we're not going to ask for permission. And our commanders are more of the kind of people that say, here's a very loose or even direct, order. This is what we want you to do. The enemy's over there. We want you to drive them out, kill them, capture, whatever. Mm-hmm. That's your objective. Bye.
Yeah, make it happen.
Make it happen. And they rely more on the eyes on the ground to make that rolling choice as to go, well, I know we plan to, take this ridge line or maybe go in through this corridor, but you know what? Once we got on the ground, the situation changed, and they can just quickly say, you know what? That's a bushwhack. We're going over here.
Right.
And that's not a typical thing that most militaries deal with. Right. So
they do give,
that's one of our strengths.
They do give the people on the ground a lot of creative license to make the mission happen. Because even then I knew when we were running missions in Iraq, it was like you didn't even really plan it. Like, you would plan it out the day before and make sure you'd go over the plan. And then in the morning, you'd have a completely different plan. It was just like, hey, this is what we're going to do. No, scratch that. We're going to do this.
And sometimes by choice.
Yeah.
Sometimes you wanted to change up your route constantly so they could not predict where you would be and at what time, right? Because combat is all about the time and place.
Yep.
It's about where you'll be and when you'll be there. And it can dictate whether or not you're going to get ambushed. I don't want to get into that.
Yeah.
But we'll move on. But the point is, right, what number 5 was trying to drive at is that there are a lot of people considering joining the military that feel that society doesn't appreciate them, and that you see all this divisive rhetoric that gets put out on social media and in the mainstream media about masculinity and manhood. And, let's face it, like being a soldier, you're going to have a certain amount of masculinity. I mean, Well,
there was always I agree. And there was always this, idea that when you go in, like, the military is hard. It's not going to, make you hard, but joining the military and getting through that initial phase and experiencing it was a hard thing to do.
Yeah, and it shouldn't be a cakewalk.
And that was a draw to a lot of people that wanted challenge. They're like, "Oh, I'm going to join the army because I wanted the challenge." That was a lot of people. Now you just don't have that. When you're like, "Oh, I'm going to join the military." Why? Because it's a job. Why? Because I want to pursue cybersecurity. Well, you can do that outside of the military. Why join the military? Because quite honestly, a lot of the stuff that you learn in the military doesn't translate. There is no licensing or translation to the civilian world. I know guys that were like, oh, I'm going to be a police officer. I'm going to go in as an MP. Well, good luck, because that's 0% of anything you learn as an MP translates to being a police officer.
I mean, it does give you a leg up, though. I mean, if you're going to go, even if it's for a position where, let's just say, maybe they don't even require you to be post-certified, and maybe they're going to consider you as a recruit that they'll send you to police academy and pay for it, have the place pay for it. Well, if you come from an MP background, they might be a little more willing to say, all right, we're going to go ahead and get you post-certified. Well, or maybe your certification from the military can count as post-certification. I don't know that answer. I'm not going to pretend to be able to articulate that answer.
Well, I'll tell you.
Maybe that's the perception, though, is that people think that, hey, the military experience will translate to the civilian world.
Well, I'll tell you now, it's actually become almost a detriment, because there's so many GWAT vets out there that when you put military veteran on your, whatever on your, what is that? I haven't actually worked for anybody for a while. What is that called?
Your job application or your resume?
Resume, because I haven't had to give anybody one of those.
I haven't updated my resume in about 15 years.
Because we didn't need to. We don't work for nobody. When you put, a veteran on your resume, it used to be like, oh, this is a dependable person. They've gone through a lot. But now when you put it on there, they're like, oh, this guy's got PTSD. He's seen some stuff. Is he going to freak out in the workplace? Is he going to do something? Is he crazy? Is he going to be hard to work around? So now it's almost become a detriment.
That's
to put
a very
it on
astute observation, because it's like society has sort of programmed themselves to think that military members who are veterans are unhinged or crazy, or that they're going to be violent or harm to themselves or others. So that's a great point. That's actually something I did never even considered in my original list.
I've had buddies that, that's happened to. And, you talk about like discrimination on like age, sex, color, whatever it is, like, there is that. It used to be called veteran preference, but now it's not.
Now it's almost like a detriment.
Yeah.
So there's a few other bullet points here, and I know we actually probably don't even have time to go through all of them, but I'm going to go through, and we'll just kind of, but we're getting kind of close on time. We've got a decent amount of time left, but I want to make sure that we go through all of them. So this one, it says they don't want to fight Americans. So as another reason why someone might not want to join the military, maybe. And this is, of course, my opinion, mind you. These are all opinions. This is not like some factual thing that I came up with. These are just my observations. Whether it's because I'm a victim of the time, or I'm a product of the time, or perhaps I'm just an observer of the time, or a casual observer of what's going on in our time. All I can do is observe what I see and react to it and develop my opinion on those things. So understand that where these come from, or these are bullet points that I kind of see as having my fingers on the pulse of our country. These are the beating of the heart that I feel when I talk to people, when I'm in my travels, and I discuss with young men and women who are considering joining the military, which many of them ask me. I can't tell you how many times I go places and someone says, well, what do you think about joining? And then they tell me their concerns. So these are some concerns that I have heard directly from young men and women who are fans of the channel and that have spoken to me. So understand that these are things I observe, but they're still my opinions. Please understand that. So number 6, they don't want to fight Americans. Well, what do I mean by that? Well, what we're talking about is this peaceful divorce that seems to be happening across the country. Now, whether or not we want to admit that balkanization is a thing, it's a thing. Okay. And right now, this balkanization is very, very subtle, and maybe it's not like a literal change of lines on a map or whatever, but it's a change of lines in society, right? And I think that there are a subset of people, now maybe it's not a large subset, but definitely a subset of people, obviously by the lack of recruitment numbers. You have to reasonably surmise here that it's enough of a concern that, people don't want to be put into a position in choosing between the people and the military industrial complex or the administrative state or what have you, right? People do not want to be put in a situation to put on a uniform and be told to round up guns or confiscate guns or to, carry out any other will or edict of the state that they may not agree with. And I think that's a very real concern. Now, let's see. Also, Gen Z, Matt, this group of people, they're probably one of the most depressed group of people in a long time. Like 60% of Gen Z males have some form of depression, and they don't feel like they have a sense of fulfillment in their life. And they lean very strongly on their individual family units and their small circles of friends. So there's this lack of community with Gen Z that I feel like maybe 100 years from now, there'll be some study that some behavioral scientists will do on this that's much more qualified than I. But maybe they'll lean back on someone like me 100 years from now, or you and I, and say, well, those guys were right. They called it. But it's hard to not see.
Well, and I think that happens with every generation. I will tell you that I know we spoke briefly about this before we started the podcast, but Gen Z are, like you said, some of the smartest people, technology-wise. They're far smarter than our generation. But when you start looking back at history, we would say the same thing about other generations. Like when we were in the military, we said, "Oh man, our military experience was hard, but it wasn't like the guys in Vietnam." And then those guys are probably like, "Well, it wasn't like jumping into Normandy." I mean, when you look back through time, every generation got softer. Like, as much as we like to say we like to get stuff done and we're hardcore and we just did it and we gritted our teeth and bared it, if you look at the guys from like Vietnam or World War II, those soldiers, they're like, you guys are weak. Like, these guys are running up mountains in jump boots with no socks and boss stone with no jackets and freezing. Like, I couldn't fathom that. This is like, it's unthinkable.
Imagine strapping a shield to your arm and a sword and knowing that you're about to go and personally, person to person, fight every single person in front of you until either you're dead or all of them are dead. And imagine the grit that took.
So, yeah.
Now, if you strapped a sword and shield to somebody now and told them to do that, what would they do? So, yes, every generation always views themselves as unworthy of the sacrifices of the previous generation. And that's a great observation, Matt.
And like Gen Z now, like they've actually done studies. They're technically savvy. They're very smart.
They're well educated.
They're very well educated. They place an overemphasis on education, which is a completely different thing. But they don't, for some reason, don't have the same motivation to they're just content. They're content with what's given to them. And that's getting off into the weeds on, why the administration is giving out so much money, because they've caught on. They've caught on and said, this generation is content. So as long as we keep them content, we're good. We can do what we need to do.
All right. I think we already touched on this. We were kind of talking about how, we've got 20 years worth of GWAT veterans. And I mean, a lot of us have kids. Mm-hmm. And what do you think we're going to tell our kids?
Yeah, my daughter would never. Yeah,
that's a given. Okay, we're just going to move past that. I think we already pretty much covered that. All right. People are tired of endless wars. I mean, look, after 20 years of all this stuff, again, we talked about how disastrous the Afghanistan withdrawal was and everything like that. People are tired of it. They're tired of endless war. And think about it. All right, at the time that the global war on terrorism was over, let's just say that the pullout of Afghanistan was the end. Let's just call that the end. Whether or not it really is, one could argue. Okay, again, 100 years from now, maybe some scholar will say, well, it actually didn't end until blah, blah, blah. Look, let's just say it's over as of the pullout of Afghanistan. You've got an entire generation of people that all they've known their entire life. All right, if someone was killed in Afghanistan during the pullout and was only 18, 20 years old, guess what? That person's whole life, all they've known is that their country's been at war. Mm-hmm. And we have to do better than that. Well, I think people are tired of endless wars.
I agree.
The people that saw it coming and then dealt with it, fought in it, survived it, and now see the other side of it, how it looks, they have even more of a different view, because they're like, you know what? We liked how life was before all this. We want to go back to the pre-9/11 world.
Well, think about this for a second. In the same way that, we bred, terrorists when we were in Iraq. So if you were out on a mission and you killed a kid's father, they grew up. We were there long enough for that kid to be a grown man and continue the jihad in his dad's place. Same thing happened in the U.S. You would have a young soldier or Marine or airman go overseas. The wife might be pregnant. Guess what? That war is 20 years. That kid, there was enough time for that kid to turn 18, enlist in the military, and still do 2 combat rotations in either theater of war in the same time. So the same thing that we were doing in overseas, the same thing happened here. And I know there's kids that grew up and followed in their parents' footsteps and did the same thing. That's how long this war has been going. And look at the history behind it. Vietnam, we pulled out. People evacuating off the embassies and helicopters. Afghanistan, pulled out. People falling from airplanes, falling 20,000 feet because they're trying to cling on to their landing gears and freezing to death. Most recently after that, Iraq, evacuating the embassy off Iraq in helicopters. Yeah. Every single conflict, we're really good at starting and maintaining wars. It's been quite a while since we finished one in our favor.
Well, and I think that a bulk of society has generally, begun to sort of look at conflicts that the U.S. is involved in more from a perspective of expansionism, globalism, this empire, if you will. And I think that people are kind of waking up to the idea that, I mean, look, we're not saying that Gen Z and others, including ourselves, are not courageous enough to pick up arms and protect our country if we're invaded. Now, look, now someone wants to come on our shores and start some trouble, they better watch out, because that, on the other hand, would, unite people in a way that this country hasn't seen since World War II if somebody actually decided to set foot on our shores. Okay, so let's suffice it to say that American grit exists. It's just that we've gotten wise to the concept of, Bush said it perfectly himself, right? Like, fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me.
Actually, he said,
he did, you better not do that again.
He said, well, ain't going to fool me no more.
But the point is though, people are tired of, endless wars. And look, if someone's trying to hurt us, I understand. Like, obviously, if they're the enemy and they're here and they're at our doorsteps, that's a completely different discussion. Okay.
Well, my biggest fear right now is with everything that we're going through as a nation, as a country, with the spending that we're spending. I've been watching Biden's, national addresses, and apparently we're spending a tremendous amount of money. 40 billion here, 6 billion on this, 2 billion on this, more stimulus checks. So with that said, I'm going to wrap it up on my end real quick. Our weapons supply is low. We've sold everything off that we have to Ukraine for the most part. We're trying to replenish our own, weapons supplies. All of our artillery's gone. We have no tanks. We eliminated tanks from the Marine Corps, so all the tankers got reclassed. We have no more tanks in the Marines. Army still has tanks. Artillery shells, we've sold all those off. Fighter jets, we've sold off to other countries. We're down on recruitment. So as much as you and I, Eric, talk about paper tigers, Russia being the biggest paper tiger now, China, who knows? My fear is that, even you and I are being fooled right now because, as the numbers state, we're low on everything across the board. Weapons, munitions, soldiers, everything, money,
at this
oil.
point, our greatest strength is our geographical location.
That's it.
And that's it. That's all we really have going for us. And the fact that the people around us don't want to kill us bad enough yet.
Exactly.
Well, but that doesn't mean it's not going to happen.
We have Canada and Mexico to thank for that. So thank you for being great allies.
Well, Canadians are going through a rough time themselves. Trudeau isn't exactly...
Dictator Trudeau.
This is some really weird situations geopolitically, which could merit an entire different podcast. We are kind of getting, towards the end of this podcast, but here's the thing. When we view, let's say, someone like Russia, and people say, oh, well, they're a paper tiger, they're harmless. Well, they're not harmless, but look at what's going on with their recruitment. All right, they're struggling to find 300,000 bodies to throw into the fray in Ukraine.
Yep.
Now, whether or not Ukraine has the numbers to fight that 300,000 people off, look at the result of what's happening, right? You've got Russian civilians who are clamoring to get to the borders of Georgia, Finland, any country that will take them so they can escape Putin's war machine.
All the flights are full.
We're beginning to see the same sort of thing. Like, if we compare this to Vietnam, right? There were many people that were drafted in Vietnam that fled the country. They didn't want no part of it, right? So is that to say that this is Putin's Vietnam? Well, no, maybe not exactly, right? But the point is, though, I believe, is that let's just say the alliance between China and Russia has been spotty at best, and more of a, let's just say, an alliance of necessity rather than what they really want. Because I think the long-term indifference of what China and Russia's goals are for their individual countries moving forward are definitely at terms, or not in terms of each other. They're certainly at odds with each other. And what I worry about is China going in while Russia's weak and then taking over Russia or something like that. And then China going, well, there's this Bering Sea land bridge to Alaska. Why don't we just go on and go mess with America, right? So, are we going to be strong enough if that time ever comes to ensure that if we are invaded, which very well could happen, that we have the readiness and the will and the heart and the courage to fight them? I'm looking at this as a 10, 20, 30 year, this is generational situation that could come to pass, or it could come to pass much sooner than we think.
Yeah, nothing is outside the realm of possibility when it comes to geopolitical politics.
and it's definitely out the scope of this video. But look, military recruitment's down. Matt, that's our perspective, brother. Yep. I hope that everybody, can understand where we're coming from. Look, I have nothing but respect for the institution that is our military forces. Look, okay, I understand. Look, the Army, I love you guys. Look, we've all sacrificed a lot. I'm not saying that I don't appreciate the military and what they accomplish and what they do and the courage of the men and women who join their ranks and the ones that serve now. This is not an anti-military video. It's not. All we're trying to do is lay out in a concise way what we feel are some of the reasons that they're suffering with recruitment. And I hope that you can understand that we're trying to be fair. And
being fair is important, because when you're not fair and you show bias, then it doesn't leave that much up to the imagination on where you stand.
Agreed. Man, interesting times we're living in.
I thought it was a great conversation, and it's one of those subjects that's hard to talk about without trying to come off as being anti this or anti that. And I think we did a very fair job, especially because we have experience being part of, the military industrial complex. We have experience in a combat zone doing combat things. We've been on the other end where, you've had to clean barracks with the toothbrush. Like, you just understand everything that goes into being
the lifestyle.
Yeah. And being the low man on the totem pole as well, because that's a
right.
big part of it.
That's right. Well, I hope everyone has a great week, and thanks so much for tuning back in with Matt and I. We are trying to get as many LLP episodes in the hat as we possibly can. Understand we've got a lot going on in our everyday lives, and that we want to continue LLP and keep these going for y'all. But, there may be an occasional lapse of videos, and I apologize for that. But we will definitely keep these rolling as much as possible, and I hope that in the future we're going to bring in a lot of awesome guests as well. So we're working on that. Be patient, please, and we will definitely keep these episodes coming. Have yourselves a wonderful week, a great day. Keep your heads up. It's going to be okay, and we will catch you guys on the flip side.
Bye, everybody.
Thanks for listening to Life, Liberty, and Pursuit. If you enjoyed the show, be sure to subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and anywhere else podcasts are found. Be sure to leave us a 5-star review. We'd really appreciate that. You can support us over on Ballistic Ink by picking yourself up some merch. And remember, guys, dangerous freedom. Have a good one.